Hey everyone, Harry here to talk about the Department of Justice, the Trump administration's joining the lawsuit challenging Prop 50 in California. I think most people know what that's about, the actual Prop 50 anyway. It was a popular initiative, so passed by the people on the just completed election saying basically, what Texas did down in Texas by creating three new districts to presumably send three new Republican members to the House of Representatives. We're going to do the same to counteract them and to keep parity so they don't get ahead in this arms race. We are also going to pass a new map, and it will have three new districts that we think are going to go to the Democrats. Now, it's unusual, very unusual, to do this in the middle of a 10-year cycle. Typically, you get the census, you get all the new population, how many people live here, how many people live there. You draw the maps, and you do them according to some combination of political and all kinds of factors, but it's where we get these ridiculous gerrymandered maps in the states that are overwhelmingly Republican that do it in a raw political way. Let's just draw the most crazy-looking, disproportionate map that gives the most seats to Republicans, subject to, at least it always has been, and we'll see if it is in a year from now, but subject to the command in the Voting Rights Act that you can't have the effect of disenfranchising minority voters. You can't, in other words, draw maps so that minorities are all kind of clustered together and they wind up underrepresenting their role in the state. So, case in front of the Supreme Court now in Louisiana, 6 districts overall, 1/3 African American population. They drew a map that gave 1 out of 6 seats to created 1 out of 6 so-called majority minority districts in which the majority of voters are a minority, an identified minority. The court said under Section 2, no, you need to go back and find another one. That's happened a fair bit under Section 2. At least 15 seats in Congress are as a result of that. And the whole fate of Section 2 is now on the line because the U.S. Supreme Court is reconsidering and looks very serious about just invalidating it one way or another. The way they choose will matter in and of itself, but one way or another. But for now, Section 2 remains the law, and it therefore remains not just permissible, but sometimes mandatory to have race-sensitive lines drawn in doing a map or redoing a map, lest you disenfranchise, even if you just say, I'm just doing it for politics, but if it winds up really diluting the votes of racial minorities, you've got a problem. Okay. Enter now the Texas legislature, which, wasn't thinking about any of this stuff, was just thinking of, we want 3 more Republicans. And likewise, California wasn't thinking about this stuff, was thinking about, we want 3 more Democrats to counteract. Both states, however, and this is almost goes without saying in today's United States, though they might change depending on what the Supreme Court says, their carving out of new districts was quite racially sensitive. So the Republicans in Texas carve out 3 districts that have what they believe is going to be, there's a lot of Hispanic voters that they think are now going for the Republican Party. Query if that actually works out. The evidence of the last election might be that those gains have been eroded or reversed, especially in light of the brutal activity we've seen against immigrants by the ICE forces. Ditto in California, they carved out certain areas, but there's a lot of evidence in the record that made it seem like they were racially conscious, especially about certain Hispanic communities in doing it. Okay. Both, as is the American tradition, like, the seventh inning stretch or apple pie, as soon as these provisions pass, there are lawsuits. And both lawsuits are basically claiming you did this for racial reasons. Now, you are allowed, as I say, to do it for racial reasons, except typically when this happens under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, there's a finding that, you really got to do this because otherwise racial minorities would be underrepresented. There's a threshold finding, and you can't just do it, at least under the law in theory, in order to make race a predominant factor under the terms of the law, unless there's really a showing that there's a compelling interest in doing it in order to avoid the dilution of race and the dilution of equal franchise for minority voters. Okay. That's the lawsuit in California and in Texas. In California, the law firm of Harmeet Dillon, who is now the head of the Civil Rights Division in DOJ, someone who has spent her life fighting the Civil Rights Division as it was constituted before. Her law firm, not her, she's obviously recused, have brought the suit, saying the new creation under Proposition 50 is unconstitutional because it's too racially focused. All that is 100% predictable. But here's the latest. The Department of Justice, the United States, has joined the intervened, which are the department's allowed to do for any kind of federal law-based lawsuit, unless parties disagree or want to fight it. They have intervened in California. Have they intervened, of course, in Texas? Same argument? No. This is so much an illustration of the rank partisanship of the Bondi-Trump Department of Justice. But they've come in. They've said, "Court, please permit the U.S.'s interests to be heard." And here's our complaint in intervention, which is just a way of saying why we think California is wrong. But it's just so completely partisan, because you can say almost anything that's in this complaint and put it in the complaint against Texas, and that's not happening. And that's really the news here. The arguments that they're making, that basically, yes, you can use race, but you have to make that showing first. That's pretty much a carbon copy of what the DCCC is saying in Texas. And that's fine. That's what the, Republicans and Democrats fight about in Texas. What the Republicans and Democrats fight about in California. But where does the federal government get off in representing all of us, the national interest, in somehow saying, California, ooh, bad, racist. Texas, not a problem. We don't have to intervene there. So that, to me, is the basic story. The substance of it is fairly predictable. All of it could change, I want to say. The law of it could change depending on what the Supreme Court does with Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, but I don't think they would do it in time to affect the midterms, which these have been put into place precisely to affect. So California is like, we're not letting Texas take this razor's edge that Republicans have and increase it by 3. We're meeting them blow for blow. Politics as usual, down and dirty, but the specter of the country's government so patently putting a thumb on the scale only for Republicans, not for Democrats, speaks volumes. Talk to you later. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video and other Talking Feds content, please take a second to like and subscribe. Talk to you later.